Um, Hello, everyone. My name is John Chin. I'm the Resilience Clean Transportation and Analytics Manager from the Hawaii State Energy Office. And I'm here to talk about our Advanced Assistance Project, which wrapped up in October of last year after about a year and a half of work. And part of that project, we developed a GIS tool. Um, So I'll share a little bit about that as well. We worked pretty closely with ICF on this project, so they were the ones really doing the tool development. But we'll get into that a little bit more. So just a high-level advanced assistance project overview. This project was funded by FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program funds. And reason we call it advanced assistance is those are a type of project and they're typically used to collect the necessary data to develop more complete hazard mitigation applications. And so as we were going through this project, we really wanted data that could support us to pursue funding, in particular for programs like BRIC, which is a large annual program for resiliency, and it's funded at about 5% of costs for all disasters nationwide. So you can imagine it's a pretty big pot. It was funded at over $2 billion last year. But we also wanted to leverage this project to help with a number of related efforts and desired outcomes. And the first thing is really developing a common operating picture for energy. It's useful, in our role in emergency response. HSEO is the coordinating and primary agency for ESF 12. We also have responsibilities to keep the state's emergency security plan updated. And so this type of work, inventorying critical energy infrastructure, would do that. And finally, we want to be able to prioritize energy resilience investments, not only selecting projects for BRIC, but we're also managing some IIJA funds. It'll be about $15 million over the next 5 years for grid resilience. And so we needed a framework and a way to help us prioritize and select those projects. And as part of that, we also wanted to develop a visualization of the common operating picture and have a tool. And that's really where the GDSS comes into play. GDSS is Geospatial Decision Support System. We wanted to map the energy system, know where the assets are geospatially, but probably the more novel part of this project is that we wanted to incorporate interdependencies. So understanding not only the interdependencies within the energy system, for example, a pipeline feeding a power plant, but also dependencies of community lifelines on the energy system. And if you haven't heard about community lifelines, it's a FEMA concept, and lifelines are defined as the most fundamental service in the community that, when stabilized, enables all other aspects of society to function. And you can see here on the right-hand side, these are some of the major community lifelines, energy being one of them, but also communications, transportation, water, safety and security, and health, etc. So here's a very high-level look at the segments of the project. So first, we undertook an inventory of both the critical energy infrastructure, or CEI, and the community lifeline key customers, or CLKC. So keep those two acronyms in mind. I'll be using them a lot. And the focus of this inventory is on Oahu, with the primary goal of really defining the system linkages and understanding the dependencies. Next, we conducted a risk assessment, evaluating natural and non-natural hazards, potential risk to the CEI. We created the GDSS, as I mentioned, to map all the assets and view the results of the risk assessment. And again, visualize those dependencies defined as part of the inventory. And then lastly, now that we had the results of the risk assessment, what do we do about it? So the last part is that we use the results to identify and prioritize a number of mitigation measures and then translate that into a multi-year plan, implementation plan. So starting with the inventory, the first task, we met with each of the key energy companies that own infrastructure on Oahu. So the electric utility, other infrastructure owners, like oil and gas infrastructure owners, the refinery, liquid fuel terminals and pipelines, and Hawaiʻi gas as well. And we went through a slate of questions. We asked them about their facilities, any connectivity and interdependencies, including critical customers that they served, and any system constraints that they might have. We asked them if they're undertaking their own risk assessments and what hazards were most concerned to them and what elements of their infrastructure were most vulnerable. For the CLKC side, we're talking about a pretty broad group. You can see there's emergency operations centers, fire stations, police stations, shelters, hospitals, communication assets, water and wastewater systems. Since this was kind of a bigger group, we went about this using an online survey and worked through some centralized parties in each sector to push out this survey. And we mostly polled them on their energy service providers, backup service capacity that they might have, and overall energy usage. And then once we had an inventory of critical facilities in each bucket, we worked with the data provided by the asset owners to link those dependencies. So the last step of the inventory is that we wanted to prioritize the CLKC as it was going to be an important element as part of the risk assessment, which is the next step. And so this did involve an ArcGIS analysis. Essentially, they created Thiessen polygon areas that represent the most likely service territory for each of these CLKC. Well, not each of them, but certain classes of them, ones that have service territories. And then those layers were intersected with population and disadvantaged community data sets, and that was rolled up into a scoring process that helped us prioritize which CLKC, excuse me, were most critical and serve disadvantaged communities. Next, we concluded the risk assessment for the CEI. We used a fairly standard methodology, I think. So exposure times sensitivity times consequence equals risk. Exposure is specific to location and reflects the probability of occurrence on an annual basis. The sensitivity is specific to an asset type and is the expected outage from exposure to a given threat. And then consequence is specific to an asset. And this is where the dependencies of the CLKC come into play from the last step. We essentially added up like the number and the criticality of those CLKC that were served by any given CEI asset. So these are the hazards that we studied in the assessment. You can see on the left-hand side is the natural hazards. So flooding, high winds, tsunami, earthquake, landslide, and rockfall and wildfire. But we also looked at some more qualitative factors such as cyber attack, fuel disruption, accident, malfunction, and pandemic. This is the sensitivity matrix. So this is where we look more generically at specific asset types and how they're impacted by various hazards. So for example, if you look at the overhead transmission lines, those can be easily affected by high winds. So it gets a score of 3, while flooding would have limited impact. So it gets a score of 1. And then finally, the consequence scores again. This is where we roll the CLKC prioritization into it to understand essentially what happens when an asset is lost. What are the downstream impacts of losing X substation? And so here are some high-level results. And to be a little vague, but if you're familiar, be able to guess which assets these are. But the top assets by total risk score, we had 3 pipelines that move petroleum products from Kapolei to terminals and power plants near Honolulu. Several higher voltage transmission lines that stem out from one of the largest Oahu power plants, and key marine import terminals, and a key jet fuel terminal. And on the right-hand side, this basically shows the percent of total risk by hazard. The 2 blue ones are flooding, so both inland and storm surge, as well as coastal flooding and erosion. And then the green is wildfire. And this analysis was done pre the disaster on Maui. And in retrospect, it was interesting. We had a goals and objectives workshop, and when these results were talked about, most people felt that wildfire should be quite a bit lower, and that it should probably show that high winds or storms and tsunami were higher. But you can see in this chart that high winds and tsunamis actually are quite a bit lower. So, and of course, now we are very aware of the risk of wildfire. And then finally, we did a risk mitigation approach. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but given the risk assessment results, we wanted to develop mitigation approaches. And so the first thing we did is we determined mitigation goals and objectives, and you can see that these are the 4 that came out of the workshop. And these are things that align with other plans as well as policies locally. So reducing the occurrence and duration of energy service disruptions, preparing for the impacts of climate change, mitigating risk again to the community lifelines, and then supporting our transition to clean energy. We developed through this process 28 mitigation measures of all different types, but they generally fell into these buckets. So strengthening, absorbing impacts, and advancing resilience through planning and policy. And then, as I mentioned before, we also wanted to develop a framework to be able to evaluate various projects and compare projects. And so we came up with that framework. But here are some of the questions essentially we were asking ourselves about each project. This part of the project also included a capabilities assessment, and this is essentially a community-wide assessment of capabilities. So both in the government sector as well as the private sector, what abilities do we have to implement some of those mitigation measures that we'd identified? Where's the funding that's available, as well as technical skills, staff, etc. And then finally, we developed an implementation plan. So how do we get those 28 mitigation measures implemented? We had ICF basically put together action worksheets. So identifying who needs to be involved, the costs, the timeline, benefits, and next steps. So now I'll talk a little bit about the geospatial decision support system, which I imagine you folks are most interested in. So it was one of the primary deliverables of this project, and I wish I could give you a live demo of the tool because it's pretty handy. But unfortunately, one of the challenges throughout the entire project was the use of sensitive data. And so obviously the utilities work hard to protect their systems, and the data should be protected and treated very carefully. So we had to sign NDAs to get access to some of this data. But ultimately we were able to put together this great tool, and I can share some screenshots in later slides and kind of talk about some of the functionality of the tool. At present, the users are all within the State Energy Office, the Office of Homeland Security, and HIEMA. So I do want to thank Arthur, Joan, and also Todd for their help as we're really kind of considering our options as we move forward with this project, and how the GDSS was going to be developed and where it was going to end up living. In the end, the GDSS is hosted in the Office of Homeland Security's enterprise environment. We figured it was a good spot since OHS deals with a fair amount of sensitive data, but they're also working on a critical infrastructure protection program that will involve other sectors. And so the GDSS can really be that foundational platform to build upon. So the GDSS has two sides to it. One side is the infrastructure and hazards tab, and the other tab is the dependency and insights tab. And so for the dependency insights tab, we used ArcGIS Insights and the link analysis tool to visualize the relationships between nodes that were mapped. So here's a look at the infrastructure hazard side, and this is a little more straightforward. Each of the CEI assets are mapped, on the map. Same with the CLKC. If you look, there's the layers that you can click on and off. So we have the CEI, CLKC, all of the hazard layers that were used in the analysis. And we added in some demographic data as well. On the left-hand side, this highlights the critical energy infrastructure by type. So you can kind of filter quickly. If you click on terminals, you'd see all the terminals. You can see there's a risk score that's included right here. So they included the risk scores for each of the assets. They color coded them by criticality. And then if this isn't enough, you can also pull up the table. This little caret at the bottom would pull up the table where you can get deeper into the data behind it. So this is the other side, the dependencies insights tab. And essentially, on this tab, you can explore the relationships between the nodes. And so I don't know if you can actually read this or not, but this is as high level as you can get. We're looking at the SPM right here, the single point mooring off Barber's Point. That's where all the crude oil comes in and goes to the refinery, which you can see the refinery is selected. And so by clicking on a single node, you can see all downstream and upstream nodes that are related or dependent. on the node that's selected. Again, there was color coding that was used to differentiate systems between liquid fuel, electric, and gas. You can filter using the left-hand side by asset types, or you can even search for the names of assets. And then anything that you do in the nodes, the relationship side would be highlighted within the map on the right. So next steps, again, this was just done for Oahu, but we are hoping to get more funding through BRIC to complete a statewide energy common operating picture. So we'll be including Kauai, Maui, and Hawaii counties, and hopefully start that sometime this year. And as I mentioned before, the GDSS will be used as a platform for the Critical Infrastructure Protection Program that OHS is running. If you have any questions about that, Jamie Collins is on this call, and she can tell you more. And that's it. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer. I'm more of a novice GIS user, but it was a real pleasure working with Esri as well as ICF and all their expertise. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Mark Hakoda has a couple questions. Mark, you want to unmute yourself?
No, I just wanted to know if we could get a copy of this presentation.
Sure. Yeah, I think that can be done.
When the recording's ready, I'm going to post it on our YouTube channel, and I'll include links to this presentation, as well as I think if Craig has a PowerPoint or a PDF or something, I can include a link to that as well. And I'll send out an email once that's available. If you want to just periodically check our channel, it's youtube.com/. In fact, I'll put it in the chat because it's kind of complicated. Any other questions? Okay, if not, thank you very much, John. It's a very actually, I'm sorry. I have a question. And I'm sorry, I had to step out for a minute, so you might have said this, but is there any aspect of this that is going to be maybe not public facing, but that agencies will have access to that are not part of the NDA?
Possibly. That's definitely been something that, as we've shared the GDSS with others, they've asked that for access. Again, OHS would be the gatekeepers on that, and currently, I mean, so we have the NDA in place, but then also another requirement would be being PCII, which is Protected Critical Infrastructure Information certified, which isn't a terribly rigorous barrier, but something that is important to do before gaining access. But I don't know, actually, if Jimmy's on the call, Jimmy, if you had anything to say about that.
Yeah, sure, definitely chime in. We are actually just getting into a workshop with Esri coming next week, looking at data governance. It is my desire to be able to share as broadly with the government community in particular. I just need to figure out what kind of tools we have to put in place to make sure that, cordon off information that requires protection. So it's definitely a major objective of mine to share as much as possible as we move forward and expand on the work that the Energy Office has done. Over.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, thanks again, John. Very interesting work. Thank you. I'm going to move on now to Craig Clouet. Craig is with the Governor's Office. He's their data scientist there. Craig, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready. Say hello to everybody. Hello, my name is Craig Clouet. Some of you might remember me from my days back at Esri or Kingman School or DBEDT, but I am now at the state of Hawaii. I'm gonna turn off my video just so it doesn't bog down. Okay, so today I'm just gonna show you a couple tools. It's not a presentation, I'm sorry. It's an actual kind of hands-on a little bit to show you some of the things we've been doing here at the governor's office, basically mostly in response to the Lahaina wildfires. And in fact, I came on board with the state governor's office specifically to assist with that disaster recovery. So one of the things that, let me share my screen. That's needed in a big disaster like this, of course, would be information, right? So we need to see what's going on. And so in particular, the governor, he definitely is a very numbers kind of guy. He likes to know the facts and he likes to make decisions on numbers as opposed to just his feelings. And so him and his team definitely wanted a feed of all the information coming in. And as you can imagine, in a disaster like this, there's a lot of data coming in from various sources. For example, Red Cross, FEMA, SBA, is the Small Business Association from the federal government. Then we have our own HHFDC, the housing people, for example, that we're looking at here. So compiling all that information at a high level is important, and then also at a detail level for more decision making when we're really trying to go down into the data. So for this purpose, I decided to use a bunch of Esri technology, and that is definitely one of the benefits of the Esri technology stack, is that there's a lot of pieces that you can bring together to solve a problem. And so I'm going to show you basically a couple of the, it's all going to be live. I'm just going to show it to you. Some of the pieces that I put together to go ahead and make this, for example, this little website thing. And then I'll show you a couple of other examples of things we're working on with regarding the disaster. So what we're looking at here is, yeah, a simple web page, right? Everybody's seen a web page, pretty simple. Most of this stuff is simple, especially for the fact that the disaster is fast moving. And in fact, like FEMA or SBA, we'll look at that number. SBA program was only about a 6-month program, right? And it basically just ended. So I knew not to go ahead and spend a lot of time making fancy things when I know within 6 months or so they're going to drop, right? So it's really get the information out, people can use it, we can recompile it later if we need a different look of it. But there was no real reason for me to go super fancy because I knew a lot of this data, like this yellow ones, HHFDC, I got to take those out already because that program's closed and the SBA is closing and FEMA is going to be closing this particular program. And then it will be replaced by other programs and other data that we need to present. So again, what you're looking at is very simplified and it's not very fancy, but there's the reason is, again, it's very temporal and it's not going to last very long, ephemeral. So this whole website is, of course, made possible by the Esri Hub technology, right? So a lot of times the Esri people say it's like the WordPress-like web development environment from Esri. And it's a nice little tool because, again, it is relatively like WordPress, but actually easier just to make a simple web page. And so that is what this is. This is the Esri Hub. And then this embedded is the dashboard, right? So I can make the hub. Notice there's tabs across the top. So it is like an active website. And the good thing is Esri takes care of all the hosting of the website and the servers and all that. So I didn't have to do anything. I just go ahead and create a hub page, start adding data to it. And there you go. And then it's very flexible where you can keep adding things and taking things down, which I'll be doing over the course of the lifetime of this project. So this first page that we see on this, when we get to this site, is a summary page, right? So it's red is Red Cross, yellow is Hawaii Housing Development Corporation, grayish is FEMA, blue is the Small Business Association. And so again, very quick way to get a lot of data from different sources very quickly up. And so how do we get this data? It's somewhat interesting. Again, because of the nature of this emergency, I'll just drag this over. Largely, we get it in this unfriendly format of an email. So I will get an email from each of these different agencies. And again, it differs. Sometimes it's once a day, sometimes it's once a week. Depends on every data set has a different cadence. So again, using this technology with the Esri background, which I'm going to show you, it allowed me to very easily take things like unstructured data that's coming by email and getting it into a system of record, which is great because later in life, what's going to happen is we're going to have all that data in a database at the end of the day. Whereas again, I'm just getting PDFs, PowerPoints, just emails. And so it's, again, since it's only like a 6-month or less time frame, there was no real reason for me to get fancy ETL programs to go and extract and feed this beast, because I knew by the time we spent all the time and money to do that, that program would probably be closed. And so I'm just doing it manually quickly in the morning. Like I say, each data set comes in from different sources. But again, I'll show you a little bit how that happens. So again, we got a simple dashboard now. If you notice the dates are, it's up to date, 11/12, 11/11. You know, again, data comes in different ways, different times. And then again, and any one of these things we can actually click on, look at it at a little larger size. So here is from the Red Cross, the housing, pre-disaster housing situation for all the survivors. And so again, 72% of the people were renters, as opposed to 22% owners of property. And then there's about 4% were homeless, right? So you can, you know, right away that's going to drive what you're going to do and what you're thinking. Okay. So that's how that works. And then what, if you look at the tabs though, again, that's this quick page to get it done really quickly. But sometimes we really need that data to be look a little deeper. So each one of those basically sections, it comes out a little bit bigger. So if we look at TANF, and that's a program that started much later into the whole disaster, that's a state-run program of federal funds for people who have children, needy families. So here's another dashboard that I was able to create. And again, using some of the Esri technologies and tools, just a really quick way. Again, we get, this comes in only once a week about, I update it, but you can see quickly, you know, where the money's going. And that's very important to understand the money trail and who's being given the money and what they're doing with it. So again, here we can see what that money, it's basically there's going to be about over $100 million that's going to go out to needy families in the next 2 years over in Maui. So again, we can see rental is 37, nearly 40% of the money that's coming, given out to those people is going to rent. So that's a big thing, or mortgage, 17%. So you can see again, if you're trying to do analysis, like housing is clearly a major issue. And so this helps, and this helps track again at a high level. So this becomes a separate page, right? So if we go back, we can look at FEMA statistics. And again, we saw a couple of the FEMA statistics on the high level executive dashboard, I call it. But now I can actually pull out a little bit more of the data from FEMA in another graph or chart or dashboard. And so again, this, and the good thing about this is the exact same data. So I input the data once and I can make several different dashboards for different purposes. So again, here's a little bit more details of what's happening. And as we can see, a lot of these programs like FEMA are kind of winding down, right? So like total registrations as of yesterday were 0, less people are getting the money, things like that. So it's interesting to see the trends and what's going on. Also, what we can do with this hub technology is I can actually bring in websites that from other places and just kind of embed them in, just like any other website. So this one's really great because our DBED, you know, we have our research and economic analysis read department in DBED. They do a fantastic job, really smart people over there. Why would I want to recreate all that? So what I did is I was just able to bring in their web page that they update all the time, once a week at least. And so now you can actually cycle through all the data about like the HTA data about transportation, who's coming and going, spending, all that kind of hotels, unemployment. And again, it would be silly for me to recreate all that when they keep this up to date and they are the experts. And so I can just embed that right here. So one-stop shop, you get all this information. Or we can also go over to the SBA to look at the Small Business Association. Let's let that draw. So again, here's the same data that I'm pulling in. I can just format it slightly different. So we can see that nearly $300 million has come into the state of Hawaii for people just from this one program, right? And we can see that most of that, again, went to home loans, right? So over 1,000 people got nearly $200 million. And then the business loans, $100 million. So again, it's really important for, again, the governor and the mayors of Maui and stuff to see some of this data so they can really wrap their heads around it and keep up. But you can notice too that it's flatlined, right? This program is basically closing down right now. So that's why there's no changes. So again, trend analysis, if we went back to the beginning, it would start at 0, obviously. And then it's slowly in the last few weeks, basically they've closed the program. They'll still take a few extra loans. But other than that, that's that. And then we can also, a good thing about the hub thing, again, it's just a website development tool, and so I can throw together like just some facts and other links to other things that are going on, so that people can go to it. So question is, how do I make all these great dashboards and things, right? So let me close some of these tabs.
Parker, I think you went on mute.
Okay, are we good?
Yep, good enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, here's the form that I created for the TANF one, right? So for each one of those dashboards, I created a separate form. And the reason I did that, I mean, you could compile them into one big form and all that, but because I get the data in from separate sources on a different time frame, I decided to keep everything separate. And it's easier for me because if you notice that they're color coded, so I can quickly look and see where I am at, just so I don't make mistakes. So again, it's just a simple way to make a form is just drag and drop. And there's another way, of course, Survey 123, you can also do it in an Excel environment and get really fancy. It takes a little more coding. This way, the online one is drag and drop. If I want a date field, I drag it over. I can tell anything it wants. Like, so let's just go down for one of these. Applications received, right? So I can go and edit whatever I want it to say. I can edit some of the fields for the inputs, things like that. But again, you can just see all the data, just drag and drop, make a form, and then submit the form. And then that form becomes online available to me. So if I go to my content and I go to my ArcGIS Online, if I go to TANF here, so that form becomes an item in my ArcGIS Online account. Here it is. So I can open it from here and show you what it's going to look like as a done deal, as I see it in the mornings. So I can open it in Survey 123, either in a browser or in the app I just showed you. Survey 123 Connect is that Excel version. But in my case, because again, I'm trying to keep things simple, this is what I see, right? So I got a calendar picker, I put in the numbers, I hit submit. And this, the second I do this submit, it will update that dashboard live. And again, I don't even have to go to the dashboard to do anything. It's just automatic, which is really nice. Because again, I have like 4 or 5 of these. They're going to be changing over time. So it just makes it very easy for me to go in the morning and just fat finger it in, get it all done. If I did have, and I have in the past, occasionally say you make a mistake and you see on your graph, like instead of 1,000, you put in 1 million, right? And the spikes goes up. I can go easily into this application here on the web and I can see my data live at any time. And again, notice now that email that I get once a day now becomes a data table. So I can now export this out into Excel, or I can bring it into a file geodatabase. So again, originally we were not getting numbers in a nice table format. At the end of the day, we will have that, which is nice because we don't have it. And then again, say I did fat finger in some sort of data here, and like it's the wrong values. You can see all the data fields. I can come in here per record and I can actually edit that. Super easy, right? So again, I can look at my chart, and if I see it's like spikes the wrong way, I can come in on each one of these data fields and I could just change it. So a very simple data editing environment, very clean, easy to do. I'm not going to hit submit, but you can see. So I can create the form, very easy, enter all the data, very easy, and then manage the data. And the benefit for us is at the end of the day is we're actually going to have data tables, whereas right now, all we have is emails, which is not very valuable for data management, obviously. So that is, and I'll just show you another one. Let's see, just so you can see that there's lots of them, lots of them. So if I go to the SBA, we just looked at that one. So again, the dashboard is here. And again, notice there's several dashboards. So the same data form is doing these 4 dashboards. So I have a like executive one, I have a bigger one. So it's very easy to reuse data for different purposes. So if I click on this one, it opens up. And then again, I typically do it in a browser, which makes everything easy. And that's also very easy, again, for software wise. Like I can be, like I was for a long time at the convention center, doing some work with the Joint Housing Task Force. I could easily enter the data. I didn't have to be somewhere specific. And then you can see this form. And then if we go to one more, I'll just show you this one. Some of the tricks of the trade I do. So if we go to Red Cross one, here's my Red Cross dashboard. And again, it's creating these feature layers. Esri is really good about this. It creates, my form creates a feature layer. And then when it goes to the dashboard, it's smart enough to make a read-only version of that so that people in the dashboard can't change the edits. So that's why there's several different feature layers hosted and view only. But if I look at my form here for the Red Cross, and I open that in a browser, guess what color it's gonna be? Red Cross. And again, it sounds stupid, but like, again, you get all these emails and you're multitasking and stuff like that. It's just so much easier. I have all mine color coded, so I can just right away make sure I'm not entering SBA data into the Red Cross fields and things like that, which we would not want. So then on the dashboard side, let's see, let's go back here. Let's take a look at the dashboard. Dashboards themselves are straightforward. I'm not going to say they're easy, but they're straightforward. And definitely once you get experience with it, it gets easier, obviously. The first one's the hard one, and then after that, it gets much easier. So if we look at a dashboard, we'll pick this one here. No, actually not the Red Cross dashboard. Let us pick the SBA dashboard. And dashboard 5 embed 4. This one. It's a great, and again, this is all Esri ecosystem, ArcGIS Online. There's different ways to do it, but we can edit the dashboard here. So again, I don't need a lot of software on my computer, which is nice. It's all in there. So here's the dashboard as it looks. And like, again, you can easily go in and change things. So just take a look here, how that was configured. So we can say what data we want. We can say what fields from the data we want. We can say how, in this case, I'm doing it by report date, which is the 112, right? And so I can look at that, sort descending the last feature from report date, which would be today's date. So you can do that. You can go into the indicators. You can go ahead and change. Again, you can't do a lot unless you do programming, but I'm not big on programming. So I can change the font here from small, medium, and large, right? So I can do all that. I can pull it in the text that I want. In the middle here is my data, right? So this comes right from my data table. And then text like report date, that comes from my data table as well, right? So I can grab fields from my data, or I can just type in static data, logos, change some colors. Again, you can't do tons and tons of stuff, but you can do enough to get a nice dashboard going and change things. And then general, again, you can change some of the colors and things like that. Accessibility, there's some that built in, which would be good if I filled it all out. But anyways, very straightforward. And then you would say done. And in this case, for the chart, how do I make a chart? It's the same issue. You just you start off with a blank canvas and then you keep dragging in elements. And so here in this case, I'm filtering on report date is within the last 14 days, right? So I could change that to be the last month, the last quarter, all that kind of stuff. I can change how I want to do the values, things like that. I can add in, here's the series. So this is the data. In this case, there's only one series, but I could add in multiple series. So I could add in, the business data versus the housing data and stuff like that. And again, you have options to go through and set up all the guides and the series and the line width and the line color. Here's the color. So you have a lot of options to go ahead and change things and update things as you need. All built within this one Esri environment, which is really nice. Actions and stuff like that. So again, I'm not doing fancy ones. You've probably seen some really fancy ones. It's well within your ability to do these as state employees to go ahead, and this tool is available to you. It's just all in ArcGIS Online, so I would recommend playing around with it. You can change it. You can put a map in. You notice these ones don't have maps, and you might be like, why don't I have a map? Because in this case, it really didn't make sense, but you can easily put in maps that link to the data. So you can click on like a county and it would give you counts from that if you wished, or you can do tracking and things like that. So there is that. And you can put in all these nice icons and things like that. And there's all kinds of little fancy things you can do. So it's pretty straightforward. You can change the theme, all the colors. Again, all the unit prefixes are right there. You can change the header. You got some sidebar settings, things like that. All built in, pretty straightforward. Esri is really good about, there's online training, YouTube, Esri type training. And Esri is also very good at giving us support, as we know. So you can ask them to help you out here and there. So again, these dashboards I embed in my hub site, right? So that is that for the fancy. So that's a major one of my tasks to do is that kind of stuff. Another task that I've been asked to do is some story maps, right? People want to get pictures and stuff. So again, through the Esri ArcGIS Online environment, you can jump from making dashboards, making forms, to making story maps, which are pretty, ways to communicate your information. So in this case, I have a couple of them here. Again, the story map environment is kind of changing. There's different ways to do it, but this is the way I've been doing it. So for example, we have these two old ones, which we updated. Thank you, Adrian. She helped me. So we have these simple ones that are just, like state capitol tours, picture tours, but people like that kind of stuff, right? So we can have just an online, and it has a YouTube videos you can embed easily, pictures, text, make a story. Very straightforward. And the good thing again is it's all hosted here on the Esri ArcGIS Online cloud, so you don't need servers or a lot of assistance from ETS just to get stuff like this up and running. So you can have, here in this case, the story of our leaking state capitol. It's again, next week is the big opening for the legislature. So on Wednesday, we'll have everybody back at the Capitol and the work will begin for the next year. Again, see our great governor, things like that. So that's that story map. Another story map I'm still in the process of developing. It's kind of an interesting one though. It's again, a lot of the good things about story maps is there's questions that get asked like, well, what state properties in Lahaina got destroyed, right? And that's a question that goes across. We have RSFs, recovery support functions. So there's 7 of those, like natural, cultural, health, housing, infrastructure, stuff like that. So again, it crosses, so it's good for all the state people to know what's going on and where the problems are or what things they need to attend to. So in this case, here's an actual online map that's live, so we can actually pan around. So the red is the burn area of the fire, and we can zoom in and we can see kind of, you know, as it was before. And then we have these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 9, because there's basically 9 state properties that are largely affected. So if we scroll down, in this case, again, we all love our TMKs here, so I identified that. Here's an area where there was no problem. It's just outside the burn zone. The burn was just south of this property, which is great because it has our health center and our district court. So it would have been terrible if that caught on fire, obviously. So in that case, not a problem. But then we can look, here's the Mala Wharf area. And so we can, again, look at it, no major fire damage, although of course the wharf itself is, the boat ramp is fine, but the wharf has always been in disrepair, probably needs attention of another kind. Then we can look at over here, here's one of the HHFDC, Hawaii Housing Finance Development Corporation properties. We can see, unfortunately, that burnt to the ground. So that was a couple hundred apartments that are gone. So again, it needs attention now. And it was just built, which is really sad. And then we can look at our Hawaii Public Housing Authority. There was 2 properties that they manage. One of which here, the Pililani homes, you can see half of the properties were destroyed. So you can see it before and then after the fire. So again, we could now start talking at the cabinet level of, well, who's going to fix this? How much is it going to cost? When are we going to schedule it? What are, you know, what prioritization are we going to do with this one versus some of the other ones? And here's our governor, first lady, with the president and first lady, president, when they did several tours. They've been over there all the time. So here's another public housing, David Malo Circle. Fortunately, complete loss. So you can see. So this helps the decision makers really get a good idea when they're talking, especially to like legislature or the infrastructure type people of, okay, well, it's clear there's nothing left here. What are we going to do, right? And then try to start from there. And here's our unfortunate public library, completely burnt to the ground. Here's the King Kamehameha III school. And this one I was able to, we got some insurance information from our state insurance people. And so they actually can even give us a table of quantify the count of money. And so we can even look, you can see some of these things were built, they're very old anyway, 1957 portable classrooms. So probably not such a bad time to go. Get prepared. Anyway, so you can see the story maps are very valuable and easy to create and start up and do different ones like that. I'll just show you 1 or 2 more. Let's go here. Then we can also do applications or maps and stuff like that. So one of the questions always is on housing is where or what we're going to do with the housing situation. So we go here. I don't want that one, do I? Let me go to this other one, housing. Okay. So here in Maui Housing Pipeline, again, there's a lot of discussion between the counties, the federal people, and state people to what to do about housing, both interim, meaning like now, and then also permanent housing for years to come. So here's like a little web application. It's very simple because it changes all the time, but it just helps us identify, like, here's a site that we're here's that one site that was burnt to the ground here. Here's a site that was already in development phase. Here's a site over here that they're thinking about putting interim housing. And if we click on these things, we get information about, oh, I see. Anyway, you get the idea. There's information about each site, what it's going. So here's some DHHL properties. Here's some sites that we were looking for possible building of houses temporarily. Here's a site on the Poco where we're talking about building short-term housing, bringing in prefab housing, maybe set it up. And then we can use this as just a talking point so everybody's on the same page of where it is, what it is. And it goes across the whole island because, again, we're not just looking in West Maui, so we can look at other projects that are potentially coming online. And here's, again, all the information, how many number of units that you're talking about, who's the developer, when do we think it's going to be completed. So again, the decision makers can really have an idea of, well, because we need about 3,000 houses, where are they all going to go and how are we going to do it all at once. And so having a little simple web app like this really helps so everybody can be on the same page and be talking about the same place, because sometimes the names, as you might be familiar with, like the county might call it one thing and then the state might call it something different, even though it's the same thing. So here's like a condo, and again, it's going to be rental probably, it's under construction, who's the developer, here's the name of it. So it's really good, so we can get all that kind of information there. I'll just show you one last one. It's an interesting one. Another one we're working on is working in cooperation with our friends in Maui. It's really important that we all work together. Is I'll just show the web one. ADUs, so auxiliary dwelling units. So we're using, again, all the same GIS data, different sources for different purposes. And again, it's all ArcGIS Online. And we've been able to share, that's the other good thing about ArcGIS Online environment, is we can bring in Maui County people because they also have ArcGIS Online. So we can share data and applications with our partners like FEMA at the federal or at the county level. So in this case, it's an interesting project where they are looking to put in potential auxiliary dwelling units on lands. And so what they needed to know right away was, well, which lands currently do not have, that are zoned for residential, but do not have buildings on them now. So that's what these green ones represent. So you can see green ones basically are vacant lands that are already zoned and already have water and sewer hookup, because that obviously is super critical for when you're trying to build houses. Then also we're looking at ADUs, right? So we can also, we did some GIS analysis using our great GIS tools about setbacks and roof and things like that. So we were trying to identify properties that had enough acreage or square footage, more likely, to actually even squeeze in an ADU if the person was willing and able to take one. And so here's a quick analysis. And then what we were doing is all this needs to be reviewed by the county people. So it tells you how many bedrooms and bathrooms and baths, and if it's on septic, because those are all the criteria that need to be reviewed and approved. And then we would have, here's the actual, so the planning review, we have Department of Water review, we have this sanitation review, and then Public Works. They can all go through here and examine all the properties. Because again, the GIS alone doesn't really give you all the information. It takes somebody with some knowledge, subject matter experts, as it were, to actually say, yes, this property would be a good candidate for an ADU. And then they can work with the landowner, the property owner, to actually talk about how to get that going, get all the permits, and then maybe even get an ADU brought in. So again, so we're using GIS for all these kind of things. It's ArcGIS Online, which has been great. I use, of course, ArcGIS Pro in the background to do a lot of the analysis, like for the square footage, things like that, and do some of the editing and then publish it all up to ArcGIS Online. And then also we, can export tables because some of the people just want Excel tables. And so it's easy to do all that kind of stuff in the ArcGIS Online environment with a little help from desktop. And again, it's great because we can share this with Maui County, and so we can be on the same page with them working together. So, as you can see, we're busy here at the state, the governor's office, just trying to get information out and then also get data products in front of people so that they can make decisions, because there's a lot of decisions that need to be made about, like I said, the short-term housing, long-term housing, a lot of money, things like that. So we're just trying to do our best to get all that information out. And again, using the Esri tool stack, which has been really great, from the hub, from the dashboards, from Survey 123 forms. It's been really helpful. Then story maps have been really helpful. And then making applications, either just web maps or web apps, just to help answer questions and get us going, working collaboratively. So I think that sums up what I've been doing for the governor and the team here. And again, a lot of this feeds right into the RSF recovery support functions. We have 7 of them. The state has their team, the federals have their team, the county has their team. And so we like to, all work together and be on the same page, which is really critical because there's a lot of stuff happening all at once. And so using the GIS technology has been really helpful in getting information out. And thank you, Arthur and Joan. They also have been printing maps. We do still print maps. So there's been a couple times when we have, discussions around the big table, and they've been really helpful helping print the maps that we needed printed. So thank you, Arthur and Joan, for that. It's been helpful. Let's see. I think that's all I have. So are any questions, comments?
Mark was asking if we can have links to the stuff you were showing.
Some of it. Yeah, I'll send it to Arthur. What can be some of it's just a work in progress. I don't want to give it out when it's that way. Some of it, yes, you can have. Obviously it's for state use. It's not for public. I mean, public can look at it, but it really, the attention in the audience for most of this has been for the state, county, and federal people to make decisions. But I'll send it out through Arthur.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Craig. And I'll put that in the description of the YouTube video as well.
Okay.
That sort of leads into the question I was going to ask. It's related. How many of these things are public facing? Are they mostly internal, or are they public facing as well?
This is my chance to get a plug-in for single sign-on at the state of Hawaii, because that would make it much easier for our decision makers, people like the governor, to access data, because they particularly don't like to have lots of different logins and sign-ons. And so if we can at some point transfer over to a system of single sign-on, I think we would have much more.
I'm losing you. Sorry.
Just saying that it would be very helpful for the top level executives. Again,
Yeah.
they don't really like log in and passwords.
Yeah, and
So
we will explore that. We will explore that.
Thank you.
Oh, so I wanted to mention too that, or add that, you mentioned working with the county and I think FEMA. Another thing that helped, and I've said this, I think, at every meeting that I've been at where we've talked about the response, the GIS response to the wildfires, is that one of the things that really helped out with the collaboration, the data sharing, the product sharing, is that everybody is on the Esri platform. So it wasn't even, making your data available for download so that you can then upload it. It's making those services, those feature services available so that you're hooked into the live data feed. just the fact that everybody was on the same platform, and then we had a FEMA facilitated call every other day during the heat of the wildfire. No, well, pun intended, I guess.
Yep.
But that really helped a lot, I think, with the collaboration.
Yes, I use it all the time. Like, yeah, their imagery and stuff from the county. You can read it directly. You don't even have to bother downloading it. It's right there. Like you say, it keeps be updated. So I definitely use it all the time. It's been very useful.
You showed the hub. Is the hub, is that public facing or that's internal?
Yes. Yeah,
Public facing, okay.
public facing. Because again, the governor needs to be able to see it, and he doesn't have a login.
Yeah. Okay.
Single sign-on would help with that.
Point taken. Okay. Any other questions?
John said that about the FEMA. Yeah, the FEMA calls are ongoing, Jonathan, but they're going to be probably moved to only once a month. At least last time I talked to them. And we have one, I guess, in this week, I believe.
Okay, thanks, Craig. I want to just add a little bit about Craig specifically, and that is that, you know, we, the GIS program, we're very grateful that he's in the governor's office. He came in at a very critical time, you know, during the wildfire. Prior to his coming on board, Luke Myers, his boss, would reach out to us for some GIS support, and there's only 2 of us in the program. So our ability to respond quickly was challenging sometimes. So it's really, and there's no way we would have been able to have all the output that Craig had during this whole period. So we're very grateful to have him on board, and he's got a very deep level of knowledge with the Esri stuff. So it works out really well for us and for the state. So thank you, Craig. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks. Yep.
Okay, if not, thank you, Craig. I am actually going to turn it over to Esri. I think Todd and Allan are on the call to talk about any announcements on the Esri side.
Yeah, hey Arthur. This is Todd here. Let me just get my camera on. Okay, well, everyone, thanks for having us. Thanks for letting us connect with everyone here. And I got to say, really great presentations, John and Craig. It's really interesting to see state use examples of our technology, and you know, for things that are so critical and important as you know, decision support regarding our very important infrastructure that we depend on, and then the response efforts, the recovery efforts for the wildfires, you know, is so critical. So we learn a lot from how our users use the technology, and it helps us to better understand how we can support other customers of ours. So so I just wanted to maybe make a few comments regarding some of the presentations. You know, Craig had in his presentation represent the ecosystem of technology, and it provides a bunch of different capabilities. And for those on the call, some of you may not be aware that you actually, you might have access to this software already. If you have an ArcGIS Online account, an online creator account under the state's enterprise agreement, then you can actually do pretty much everything that Craig did and what he shared with building a survey, inputting your data, building dashboards, building some basic maps and story maps, and even a hub site. So there's a lot that's there, and that obviously only touches on, you know, certain aspects of how the technology works. And so there's potentially a lot that the technology can do for you. John, in his presentation, mentioned about sensitivity of data, and you know, Jimmy with the Office of Homeland Security mentioned that, you know, they're looking to try to share as much as possible, of course, considering that there's certain aspects of the data that's very critical and needs to be kept private. One of the strong suits of the technology is that you can actually take a data layer, which has a lot of sensitive data, and you can build a view off of that. And that view can not contain some of the more sensitive data, so that can be shareable. So it's almost you can build a layer of data off of a layer that has some that restricts access to some of the critical stuff. So there's a lot that's built into the technology that can help with that. And yeah, we're looking forward to helping, meeting with Jimmy next week and helping with that project and thinking about data governance and access to the state can get to other critical infrastructure data that's out there. So relating to that, if there's anyone here on the call today that liked what they saw, they have any ideas of maybe how the technology could help them with their initiatives or projects. If you have any ideas, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to kind of sit down with you, do a quick call, and brainstorm, different ways that the technology might be able to support your initiatives and projects. So, please don't hesitate reaching out. I'll go ahead and put my contact information in the chat here, so you can feel free to contact me anytime. And the other thing I wanted to mention here on the call today is that we actually have our biggest, it's actually the biggest GIS event of the year coming up in July. It's the Esri User Conference. It's on from July 15th to 19th. It's based in San Diego. So some of you may have gone before. If you haven't been before, I really urge you to see if it's possible that you can go. It's a really great event to learn, connect with your peers, and learn from them. Last year we had close to 18,000 users in attendance, and every year it seems to go up. There are various special interest groups that take place during the event, and of course all different sectors are represented. There's special interest groups for various programs. And then of course our founder of our company, Jack Dangerman, he kind of runs the plane area every year and gives, there's an opportunity to showcase some of the great work that our users are doing across the world. So definitely consider checking it out and attending this year. Now is actually the best time to try to get your hotel reservations in, because they actually fill up really quick. They book really quickly. And of course, it's nice to be conveniently located in the Gaslamp district, so that's walking distance to the convention center. There are other hotel options that are available outside of there, but obviously that gives you easy access to different restaurants and food and the conference itself. And then the state enterprise agreement does come with some user conference passes. Please feel free to reach out to Arthur and Joan at I think it's GIS@hawaii.gov if you're interested in attending. They might be able to give you some additional information as far as how you can actually attend and get registered. I think that's all I have today. Again, thank you for the time to speak to everyone, and I'll pass it on to Allan, my colleague. He's actually based in California. I'm here in Honolulu and supporting state and local government with the state of Hawaii and the different counties, as well as some of our other customers across the Pacific. Allan is based in Redlands, California, where our headquarters is, but he supports the accounts on the technical side for the state of Hawaii. So I'll pass it on to him. He has a few updates to give the group.
Thank you, Todd. Yeah, just very brief announcements about some resources that can be really be available. Sharing my screen. So just real briefly, we recently introduced the ArcGIS Architectural Center. Now, if you haven't gotten the email about this, basically this assists our users with building your ArcGIS architecture. Because back then we used to send out like that white paper. It's like about 80 pages. It was really difficult to kind of like digest. So this page kind of breaks it down a little bit more, where you're going to see patterns, best practices, and a library of resources, blogs, and different past presentations. and when you're going through this documentation, you're going to notice there isn't a lot of mention of our products and of our tools. And that is by design, because this page is designed for like the IT minded people to bridge that gap between our GIS users and the IT minded users of ours. So feel free to check it out. I'm gonna plug in this to the chat. Another announcement real quick is we have a training seminar that's coming up. It's only 1 hour and it's completely free. So this topic is going to be on ArcGIS Arcade Essentials. So they're going to be going over what Arcade is. And to those that don't know what Arcade is, it's a programming language built within the Esri ecosystem, which will enhance any of your dashboards, your labeling, expressions built indirectly within the applications. Again, this one is going to be on February 2nd. There's 2 sessions. One is at 9 a.m. Pacific, so for the early birds, and 11 a.m., so 9 a.m. Hawaii time. Feel free to check this one out. And the other one is the MOOC. So for those that regularly attend our MOOCs, MOOCs are our massive open online course. And this one is backed by popular demand, which is a spatial analysis one titled Going to Places with Spatial Analysis. It's a 6-week course. This is for those that want to get a deeper understanding of spatial analysis. At the very end, you do get a little bit of homework. You have to spend some time in doing this class, but at the very end, you do get a nice little certificate. So that is it. I'll attach these links to the chat. If there is any questions, let us know. Kind of just going back to what Todd said, if anybody needs any help, we are more than happy to do so.
And I'll just plug one other training option that we have. When John showed details about the geospatial decision support system, there's various technologies, Esri technologies that was behind that. ArcGIS Insights was one, but Experience Builder was another. And it's actually kind of like the next level. If you saw a lot of what Craig did with our dashboard technology, and it's actually taking things to the next level and building experience, whether it's like a web experience or kind of like a dashboard of sorts, or kind of more of like a user experience that's kind of like an application. And so we actually have a few different training options that's available, and I'll put those links in the chat so you can check them out. Definitely, I think it's worth, if you haven't had experience working with our Experience Builder technology, dig into it a little bit, because it gives a lot of flexibility with the technology, and that geospatial decision support system, kind of the wrapper around that, the different buttons and interfaces was put together using the Experience Builder tool. I think that's all we got. Thank you very much, Arthur and the state.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks, Allan. I don't see any other questions. I do want to reiterate what Todd mentioned, and that is that Todd is local. He's in Honolulu. Allan is near local. He's in California. I think with plans eventually to relocate here, I hope.
That's right. Yep, working on it.
So there are local Esri connections. And I think Todd and Allan have shared their emails. Okay, if there are no other questions, I do have a poll. Let's see if this comes up. Okay, can everybody see the poll? Todd, can you see the poll?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, if you can go ahead and these are just possible brown bag topics for the future. Usually we have a brown bag that's around a particular project, but we could also, pivot to do little mini trainings. Esri used to have a monthly all-day workshop at their Honolulu office, which is no more. That went into depth into particular topics, but again, those workshops are no longer offered. And as you all know, the instructor-led trainings that are generally 1, 2, or 3 day kinds of trainings are a little pricey unless you have a budget for training. The other option is the online free videos that are generally 1 to 3 hour things, but they may not go into sufficient depth. So one possibility is maybe we'll have a brown bag, which is, just an hour, but a brown bag dedicated to touching on one of these topics. So based on your interest, we might set up a future brown bag for something like this. And speaking of brown bags and the user group meetings, again, if you have a particular project you're working on that you think might be of interest to other users, either because of the workflows that you're using or the particular tools or resources that you're using or the data that you're using, please get in touch with us. We'd love to have you present at a future brown bag or users group meeting. So with that, we're going to finish early, it looks like. I'll give you back 15, 20 minutes of your day. So thank you all for joining. And when the recording is ready, I'll upload it to our YouTube channel. I'll send an email out letting you know where that is. That description will have links to the presentation as well as links to the resources that Craig shared and that Esri is sharing as well.
Arthur, as a by the way, I'll just mention regarding the workshops, we'd like to get those going again. And I think when Allan is located here in Hawaii, when he moves over here, there will be an opportunity to start those again. And we're looking at where would be the best place to kind of hold those. So definitely we'll look forward to that. I think that was a really great resource for state users, and we'll look forward to providing that again because a lot can be learned within those workshops and the technology.
Great, looking forward to that. Okay, everybody, have a good weekend. Have a good long weekend. Just a reminder, Monday is a holiday. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.